But meantime, let's talk about the guest who's right here with me right now, and that's Roy Smith. He joins me now in studio on this very topic of what the new Wall Street should look like and some of the reforms that are underway there, what the president's pushing for. You've got a great editorial here in Business Week that was published this morning. These days you're a professor. You also, I do need to say, used to work at Goldman Sachs. So you've got a bit of perspective on just what it's like inside of a firm as well. Tell me why you're concerned about the existing Dodd bill and the Republican leadership's concerns about regulation. What's missing from the conversation?
Good morning, Margaret. The bill has taken a couple of years to get to this point and been through all sorts of discussions and so forth. Is a reasonable effort to try to put some sort of block on the too big to fail banks being too risky in the future. We're now this is our second financial crisis in less than 10 years that have had major impacts on the world economy, and we don't want to have these happen again. And one of the ways to deal with that is to reduce the size and riskiness of these very large banks, the too big to fail banks we're talking about. These banks already have a big incentive to be as they are, in the sense that they get a subsidy from the government in having a lower cost of borrowing because everybody knows they're too big to fail. So what to do about it has to fall down into three categories. One is you can make them smaller, which is not going to be part of this bill.
Right.
Another is you can make them less risky, which is not likely to be part of a bill, although a piece of the Volcker rule remains in there to some degree. And so we're left with a regime that requires that we believe that the regulators are going to be able to regulate better than they have regulated in the past using the new tools that they have. That isn't too promising. So
right,
what we
changing
really
the rules without enforcing them isn't going to solve anything.
Even if you have higher rules. But what we need is to have some incentives to
And you
banks.
want a bank tax.
Well, the bank tax is the European name for what we call an insurance fund, which are in both bills. Both the House and Senate bill have a kind of insurance fund paid to by the banks, which would be the cost of paying for the subsidy. Now, the insurance fund takes the burden of dealing with it off the taxpayers if they have to deal with it in the future.
But why would a European model work here if the European model didn't work for Europe in their financial crisis?
They didn't have it then either. So they're proposing a bank tax to be new, and we're calling it a bank insurance fund, but it's effectively the same thing. The banks have to pay out money every year in return for the subsidy they get. This makes the cost of being a big bank higher than of being a smaller bank. And you add to that the cost of capital restrictions and such that are coming down the line through the Basel Committee. By the end of the year, there should be an overall cost menu that only the too big to fail banks would have, which would reduce their returns on investment sufficiently so as to give them an incentive to rethink their business model and to break it down into parts that are less hazardous to the whole system.
Right.
My fear is that the Dodd bill, which has one of these things in it, is about to lose it in the trade-offs that go on.
We're talking about just that. We do have to take a commercial break. Roy Smith, thank you so much for coming and making your case.